Many of you may already know Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, they're already looking at a 2-fight deal to come around in April of next year. What does this mean? Well, before I get into that, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, dislike, give it a thumbs down. If you really like the video, please subscribe to the channel because it is what helps me out the most. And when you sub to the channel, hit that notification bell. That way you can get updated when I drop the newest content like this. So, what does it mean? That is the real question here. If Tyson Fury goes through with this voluntary defense, right, and fights whoever he wants to fight, because he doesn't have to worry about Dillian White, he doesn't have to worry about Povetkin, because both those guys have now got to wait a year before either one's going to get a title shot. So pretty much Fury is free to do whatever he wants to do to go on with AJ. Now, the real question is, can Fury take on a voluntary defense without doing his contractual agreement to fight Deontay Wilder? And there's a question mark here. Nobody's actually seen the contract. Nobody knows how the contract reads, and nobody knows what the expiration date on that contract is, if there very well is even a expiration date. Now, I will say this. This is one of those cases like what Canelo's going through, that if Shelly Finkel and PBC want to fight this, if Al Heyman wants to take it to court, both Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder could get held up in the court systems while they figure it out. It could actually put them both on a standstill to where neither one of them could fight if Deontay Wilder really wants this fight and if he's trying to stress to get this fight. Now, again, this all comes down to how the contract is wrote. It's either going to be a very lengthy court case or it's going to be a very quick court case. Now, I find it hard to imagine, let's just say hypothetically, that the expiration date when the fight needed to happen was, say, December 1st, right? They have to fight December 1st by the contract for the rematch. I find that concrete date would actually be concrete due to the global pandemic of COVID-19. I think a judge may backdate that, meaning that as long as that we've been going through COVID, they may go all the way, say, back to February when I believe the lockdowns first started, when boxing really came up to a wrap. You know, that might be the day that they backdate. What does that mean by backdate? That means he may be given a grace period from X date, this many months to actually get the fight on, to conclude the outcome of the fight, which means that it would extend the contract, say, into next year, possibly. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know legally if that can be done, but I would imagine, if I had to guess, especially with the COVID cases starting to spike, according to the media, that, you know, all Deontay Wilder would really have to do is just say that he doesn't feel like it's safe for him to train. You know, he doesn't want to get sick. He's too leery of COVID. He doesn't want to risk his health. And that's the reason why the fight hasn't happened. I would imagine that there's got to be some type of legal standing that would be in Deontay Wilder's favor. Again, that is only if he really wants to fight him. Because if he doesn't fight him, he's going to be frozen like an iceberg. He's going to be out there being frozen out like he talked about freezing everybody else out. Like he told AJ, after AJ and him fell through, he said he was going to freeze him. Like he told Dillian White through a text message that he was going to freeze him. Well, now Tyson Fury very well could be freezing Deontay Wilder out. Because you figure, if this happens the way that it says to happen, he will not get a title shot or a rematch in the trilogy until at least 2022. And that's if Tyson Fury doesn't have actual mandatories that he has to fight before he gives Wilder a rematch. So let's say that he beats AJ both times. Well, by then, for sure, Dillian White will be there in contention for a mandatory. I'd imagine that if Charles Martin could keep winning, he would be in there. If Usyk gets skipped with him and Chisora, the winner of that fight, if one of them gets skipped, I would imagine that they're up there for mandatory. So it's one of the things where you could possibly be looking at Tyson Fury might have 4 mandatories that he would have to fight. So potentially 2 more years on top of that. So say go all the way to 2024 before Deontay Wilder could even get a shot. So this is looking like this is Deontay Wilder's only shot at the WBC title, because you figure, I believe he's 35 years old. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have a Wikipedia page in front of me, but I believe he just turned 35 because he just had his birthday. And I could be wrong about his age. He might be 34, but I think he's 35. But anyways, so you figure if it goes to 2022, okay, that's 2 more years you got to put to his age. Although we'll say 1 year, because his birthday does fall towards the end of the year in October. So that'll put him at, say, 36 if he is 35. Then if Fury from there has to fight, say, 4 mandatories, assuming he doesn't lose those, that's 4 fights, say 2 years. So add another 2 years to that. So he will be 36, 38 years old before he would even be able to get a rematch. And that's if Tyson Fury even wants to box that long. That's if Tyson Fury even still has the belts, could hold on to them through all the mandatories, because being undisputed is not like being a normal champion. Being undisputed means that you got mandatories in every organization. It is the true champion because you have to fight the number ones of every organization to solidify yourself at the top of the mountain. And however long you can do that is how long you remain undisputed. But in my opinion, undisputed is the only way to know who the true champion is. Once you unify all of those belts, or let me say the whole way, unify all the belts, then that's really how you see who the best is. Then the boxing model becomes a UFC model, because they will just be going from mandatory to mandatory, from mandatory to mandatory. That's all it is. That's the best way to know who the best is. And that's why I think, throughout the board in all weight classes, I think they should have a tournament. If you have 4 champions, well, good. You have 2 versus 2. If you only have 3 champions, well, then you do the tournament where you have 2 champions fight 2 champions, and then whatever belt that one champion has, you make him fight the number one guy that's underneath him with that belt. And then the winner out of that will fight each other for undisputed, and so on. I think that's how you clean up the divisions. I think that's how you have a concreted number one champion. I think it should be enforced that they have to do it, that all champions have to fight all champions until there's only one champion. And if they refuse to do it, you strip them of the titles until you have a guy who's only got all the belts. No other champions. All these super franchise and BS belts need to go away. Intercontinental, cool. I'm all right with that. Interims have always been in boxing, because the interim belt is whenever the champion is unable to fight the number one contender. So normally when you see interims is like in an injury. So let's say Tyson Fury dislocates his shoulder and he can't fight his mandatory. Well, then that mandatory now becomes the interim champion, meaning they are the current champion of that sanctioning body. And contingent on if the old champion, who some people would consider the real champion, comes back to boxing, will be contingent on if that interim champion gets elevated to the actual real champion, or they just remain interim. As long as that champion comes back, that will be his first fight back to figure out who the real champion is at that point. If the real champion does not come back, then the interim champion automatically gets elevated by default to the real champion status. So interim belts, I'm cool with, keep those. But anyways, with all that being said, to get back to the point, Deontay Wilder needs this fight, because if Deontay Wilder does not get this fight, he's going to be looking at about 38 years old and a 3-year wait before he will be able to get another crack at Tyson Fury. And that's if Tyson Fury doesn't retire before then, or even want to give him a shot. So as far as legally it goes, I don't know the legality of it, because I haven't seen a contract. I'm not a lawyer either. I do not have a law degree. So I will not sit here and pretend that I would understand how it's wrote. But I will say this. I cannot imagine that if Al Heyman took this to court, that they wouldn't get an extension put on the contract due to COVID-19, due to everything being shut down, due to the fact that these guys could not even train properly, and due to the fact that even if they could find a way to train properly, they may have the fear in the back of their mind to where they could, I'm not saying they actually do, but it would be a legitimate excuse to state that they were scared for their lives and they're not going to risk their health training while there's a epidemic going on. So let me know what y'all think. Hit up the comment section. Do y'all think Tyson Fury can get out of the Deontay Wilder fight legally? Do y'all think Deontay Wilder really wants to fight Tyson Fury? Do y'all think Deontay Wilder is about to retire from boxing? And if Deontay Wilder does not retire, and if he does not get that immediate rematch, then do y'all foresee him ever getting another shot at a title? Again, hit up the comment section. Let me know what y'all think.